The minute that you open your shop door, you no longer are a mechanic.
As a technician turned shop owner turned manager, you could be a shop owner and not know how to manage people, and you can be somebody who knows how to manage people and not own a shop. I used to micromanage everything. I ordered parts, I took phone calls, I wrote checks, I did everything.
How did you do that? Like, how did you change your identity from being a technician to a business owner?
It started probably in late 2015.
Adam Smith is co-owner of Premier Service Center, where he's built a growing diesel repair business by focusing on process, people, and long-term scalability.
I would get to the end of the year, my accounting firm would say, "Oh, you guys did really good, and you owe $40,000-$60,000 in taxes." And I look at my bank account and I say, "Where's all this money you said I made?"
And what was a big hurdle you had to overcome in this growth? You went from just a handful of employees to over 30.
I had two of them actually. The first one was
Welcome to Beyond the Bay. I'm your host, Peter Cooper. Today I have a guest with me, Adam Smith from Premier Service Center. Adam, thanks for being on today. Can you tell me a little bit about your shop and your journey through this world?
Sure. Thanks, Peter, for having us on. We're a shop that's grown pretty fast. I started it myself in 2010, just still an owner operator. I used it as a little bit of extra income. I always worked on my own truck, so I started working on friends' trucks, and then it became customer trucks. I had a good friend of mine that was a front end and a alignment technician at another shop, and I asked him to moonlight quite a bit, and he helped me out. And we did that kind of part-time in the evenings on weekends until about 2013. Then my business partner, Sean, we went full-time. He came to me one day and asked if I made him a business partner, if he would kick the doors open full-time and we do this thing for real. I kind of maintained my day job at the time, and 2014, I came on full-time, and we've grown from there into two small buildings. And now we have the opportunity to be in a nice purpose-built truck shop with 30 employees.
And that's something pretty amazing, getting past that small mark to the big mark. And, from going from just a couple of technicians, which most people can do pretty easily. What do you think was one of your biggest hurdles you had to overcome when you were growing your shop?
Procedure, without a doubt, procedure. How do we function through everything? As a technician turned shop owner turned manager, which are two totally different things, in my opinion. You could be a shop owner and not know how to manage people, and you can be somebody who knows how to manage people and not own a shop. But getting those procedures down to where the shop operates in the same manner every day without us directly influencing it. I used to micromanage everything. I ordered parts, I took phone calls, I wrote checks, I did everything. And in order to grow, I had to get past a lot of those tasks and start hiring people that not only did it, but honestly did it better than I did. And that's really helped us grow.
Yeah, and I think that's a hard thing for a lot of shop owners to overcome, is getting out of their own way, is what I call it. And, how did you do that? Like, how did you change your identity from being a technician to a business owner to all the different roles you had to do? Like, how was that process for you?
It started probably in late 2015. I actually had the opportunity to go through a small business administration class or project that was offered in town. And we talked a lot about what business looks like beyond owner operator, and we talked succession planning and things like that. And it really changed the outlook that I had for my business and wanted me to start growing. The other key factor at that time was I had just hired, who's now my general manager. I hired her as a receptionist and somebody to do the clerical work, but she really saw what we had going and wanted us to grow and help us implement all sorts of things to streamline process, make sure that we're operating as like a big business and still feel like a small business.
Yeah, and I think that's something that too many people, they don't feel they have time to do, and they kind of do it out of order. They grow until they're at critical mass and things are going to collapse, and all of a sudden they step back and say, "Oh wait, we have to go back and build a foundation to support all this." And I think a lot of owners need to understand that it is a lot of work, and it may seem like this is pointless. It's absolutely pointless to write policies and procedures. I have 3 employees. It's not pointless because you're not going to be 3 employees forever, at least if you're doing what you say you're trying to do. And it's a lot easier to write policies and procedures for 3 people than it is for 30 people.
It is. And it's a lot easier to test policy on 3 people than it is 30 people. When you're trying to make policies that work for the business primarily, but you can get employee buy-in, get employee following those procedures. It's a lot easier if those are in place. And I've also found that with a solid procedure base, it's much easier to hire somebody, especially quality technicians. I tend to grab technicians from dealerships that are factory trained. And those guys are used to structure, and they want that procedure. And so us having a really strong procedural system helps me to keep or to attract and keep those quality techs.
Well, and that's actually something I want to hit on. That's a valid point. And that's that I think so many shop owners are not understanding this one simple question. Why would a technician want to come work for you? And if you haven't set up your shop in a professional, well lit, clean environment, you're not going to attract professional, intelligent, well organized technicians. You know, if you have a shop that's got, it looks like the truck threw up on itself and there's parts everywhere and there's stuff everywhere, a technician's going to see that and be like, nope, I'm out. You know, I'm just going to go work at the dealership. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, why would someone want to come work for you and not go work at Rush or MHC or any of the other massive, you know, multi-state dealership networks, unless you can build something that attracts them?
So we do that through culture. We do have the opportunity, like I said, we have a beautiful building, which has certainly helped. It's climate controlled. We're air conditioned in the summer. We're heated in the winter with floor heat. We're up in North Dakota, so we deal with some of the worst weather conditions. You know, we're from 90 and 100 above in the summertime to 30, 40 below in the winter with wind chills that can easily reach 70 below. It's a rough condition, so keeping those guys comfortable and warm and cool in the summer makes a huge difference. Making sure that when they pull a truck out of the shop, that bay gets cleaned and prepped for the next job. We're not just rolling in over mud and snow and oil. Things are picked up, garbage is taken out, and they have a clean environment.
Yeah. So how do you do that and still be productive though? Because so many shop owners will say, well, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this and I don't have time for that. How do you find time to do these things that are important? I think we all admit, you know, agree they're important, but how do you find time to do them and still be productive?
I guess it kind of goes back to my dad, you know, and he always taught me if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you're certainly not going to have time to do it right the second time. So we look at it as if I'm overhauling an engine or putting in a differential, clean care is of utmost important. That's what makes the difference between a quality professional shop and, you know, a roadside guy that, you know, works out of a van that doesn't have the facility and the ability to keep everything clean. We bill it into the job. When we bid our jobs, we make sure that we include, you know, a half hour to sometimes 40 minutes, depending on the size of the job, built to that customer, to that job to clean up. It's part of the what should be billed for. We didn't always do that. A lot of times in the past, we just cleaned up afterwards, and we didn't get paid for it. But you know, that truck made the mess. That truck gets to pay to clean up the mess.
And I think that's a valid point too, that so many shops, if you're really struggling with efficiency and utilization, but specifically efficiency, if you just can't seem to get your guys to bust out of that 80%, which seems to be this ceiling we have in this industry, guys can't get past this 80%, is you got to look at the shop. Like it's not always the technician that's the problem. If you give, you know, if you give a technician 10 hours to do a 10-hour job, meaning, okay, the book time says it's 10 hours to change a clutch. And nobody stops to think, wait a minute, we're doing this on a dump truck. We absolutely know this thing's going to have 2 inches of mud and dirt on top of the even if it's the cleanest dump truck you've ever seen, there's still 2 inches of dirt on top of that transmission because nobody's washing the top of the tranny. And people have to think about that. Like that is part of the job. You know, that made the mess. That's what's going to pay to clean it up. And I think that's a huge area of loss, you know, where a lot of shops can recoup pretty fast their efficiencies is just looking at the entire process of from the time that you assign the ticket to the job or the technician until the truck is gone and the bay is clean. What are you forgetting? Because I can't tell you, I bet only 10% of the shops I deal with do anything about capturing the time to bring in a dead truck. Like I literally made an action item in our work order system where it said disabled truck. And what was disabled truck? It was a minimum of a half-hour labor time to get that truck in the door. So if it was a tow in, the drive shaft was out, it's a crank, no start, whatever it might be, we would add that fee to the work order because that's what it took to get it in the building.
Yep. And we do the same thing. We have a line item made for it also, and we call it shopping, basically getting the truck inside the shop. We are a little bit limited on space. We have a lot of guys and everybody has their own bay. So if we're waiting for parts, then we have to pack that truck up and put it outside and bring it back in, it gets billed to that as well. It goes on the work order. That doesn't mean I necessarily have to charge it to the customer, but it's billed on there so that we can track efficiencies. We can track how much time it takes to get in. Again, up in North Dakota on a 20 below day and the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour, it takes a little while to get the loader hooked up and get those trucks pushed in the shop. At least if it's on the work order and I'm tracking that time, I can legitimately go to that customer and say, hey, it took us an hour and a half to get that truck unhooked from the trailer, pushed into the shop, driveline put back in it to get it fired up. If I choose to remove that fee or discount that fee, I can, but at least it's billed. The customer knows what it takes to get it in the shop.
Well, I think that's a valuable point too to people that are I keep hearing this word, I'm too busy. If you're too busy to track relevant data, that's the reason why you're too busy. It's because you aren't recouping your time. And a perfect example of that is something I did in my shop is I started tracking how much time the technicians were spending cleaning. And it didn't even matter if it was cleaning that was billed to a job, whatever it was just cleaning. And they wanted to know why. Well, because when I got to 20 hours a week that all the technicians were spending cleaning, I'm like, we're going to go hire a part-time kid to come in and clean the bathrooms and, deep clean the floor and all that. I don't want to pay you to do it. You don't want to do it. You don't want to be out there steam cleaning jacks and you don't want to go out there and steam clean the jack stands outside. We're going to hire a kid to do it. That's why we're tracking it.
We actually did the same thing. We made a general cleaning punch on the time clock so that we could track it. And we found out, you know what? We're paying guys $30, $40 an hour to clean bathrooms and clean jacks and take garbage out. I can pay somebody to do that. It's a part-time job. The kid loves it and he's starting to learn some stuff about trucks. He's changing tires and helping out with some other odd jobs. So, he may one day turn into a technician.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that you can't, another valid point I want to bring up on that is you can't just look at what it cost you. It doesn't just cost you $28 an hour to have a mechanic paint a wall. It costs you $400 an hour, unless you've got nothing to do, which is a whole other issue. But my point is that people have to look at the opportunity cost of things and what they're losing in revenue and not just look at, oh, it cost me $20 an hour to pay him to go clean the bathroom. No, it really cost you probably almost $400 an hour because he could have been out billing. So I do want to ask you, you've been at this a couple of years, but you've seen some pretty substantial growth in a short amount of time. What did you really like? What was a big hurdle you had to overcome in this growth? You went from just a handful of employees to over 30. That's got to be like a totally different business model at that point. What was a big hurdle you had to overcome?
I had two of them actually. The first one was managing my employees, managing the HR side of things, onboarding technicians, being able to offer benefits, having a proper employee handbook. And what we did is we partnered with a payroll company that assists us with all that. We still use them today. There's a fee associated with it. It's a percentage of our overall payroll. But it took so much off of mine and my business partner's plate that things were just handled. We knew taxes were taken care of the proper way. We knew the bonuses were getting paid properly. We knew that we didn't have to worry about a lapse in insurance because all that thing is handled by professionals. And when people ask me, is it worth the money you pay for that payroll company? It absolutely is. If I didn't have a payroll company, I would say that I would have to be an expert in payroll and HR. And I'm not. I'm not an expert in payroll and HR. I'm an expert in diesel repair. And I do what I do best. They do what they do best. And it really helps us out.
I was going to say that's a really good point, and very few business owners talk about that. And one of the ways I always explain it is if it's not your genius, why are you doing it? Like if you're not a payroll person, you're not an accounting person, why are you forcing yourself to do this task when you could be so much more productive doing something else?
Right. And I wasn't good at it, and I hate doing it. It was always the afterthought or the forced, sitting there on a Sunday night trying to do payroll. That's not what I want to do. And now I don't have to worry about it. We send off the hours or what the bonus is, and it's taken care of. The only time we hear about it is if something gets messed up or a check isn't quite right for whatever reason or perceived not right. And then it's a call to the payroll company. They take care of it.
Well, and I think that's what you were talking about, doing payroll late on a Sunday night. You don't want to do it. I teach a lot of business owners that procrastination is actually a very powerful thing. And this is something that came from a business coach called Dan Sullivan. And he basically, the way to put it simple is, if you find yourself procrastinating on something, that's just your brain's way of telling you that's not something you should be doing. I find out over and over again, I never have to tell my children to go play video games because they want to do it. I got to remind them to go do the dishes, but I never have to tell them to play video games. And you could take that same psychology lesson and use it in your own business. If you find a task that you don't enjoy and you're not good at, and you're always putting it off, why are you doing it? There's someone out there that's their genius and they're happy to do it. I mean, I get we all have to do things we don't want to do, but you get to a certain point, if you start tracking that, you're like, I'm so much better off paying someone else to do it.
Absolutely. The other thing that really helped us grow and get over the challenges was hiring an outside accounting firm that specializes in small business. And they actually function as a virtual CFO. I'm not a businessman by trade. I didn't go to college to be a business owner. So actually understanding the financials and what they mean and how they affect taxes and how bottom line revenue is affected is something that doesn't come natural to me. And having an accounting firm that takes the time to put a leadership package together to show budgetary numbers, to show monthly and quarterly numbers and projections in a manner that we can understand and digest in a short period of time takes guessing out of being in business. And that partnership with a good accounting firm has really propelled us to that next level. It really allows me to focus on what the shop is doing, what we're doing well, what we need to work on, and making sure that employees have what they need, are getting the job done in an efficient manner, so that ultimately we all make good money.
Well, and that's a really powerful statement, because I can tell you from how I started my shop, I was completely financially illiterate. Like, I did not know what a P&L was. I never had a concept of what a balance sheet was. And I would just look at it and be like, oh, we did really good. We have money in the bank. Like, we must be doing okay. We have some money. And then there was days we didn't have any money and I couldn't understand why we didn't have any money. And it's like, where did it all go? What happened to it? Well, I don't know. Nobody knows. Well, that can't be good. We can't be running a business like that. And that was a hard thing, because same thing with you. I went to school to be a mechanic. I went to trade school. I got a 2-year degree. I didn't take accounting in high school. I wish I would have, even though I hate it, because that's what runs the business, right? It's numbers, it's facts. And if you can't understand things like what your cost of parts is, and you don't have a budgetary thing where you're trying to hit certain numbers, honestly, for a lot of shops, it's surprise you made money. Like, they don't even know if they're making money or not. It's just a surprise if they do.
What really got me to the point where I knew I needed somebody to help us out financially or with the financials is when I would get to the end of the year, my accounting firm would say, "Oh, you guys did really good. And you owe, 20, 40, $60,000 in taxes." And I look at my bank account and I say, "Where's all this money you said I made?" Because I don't have it. It's not in the bank. That was a really tough thing for me to understand. Having somebody that actually explains that and manages those numbers all the way to the end of the year to help mitigate those tax liabilities has made such an enormous difference in growth. And again, it's letting a professional that my accounting firm now, the guys that are helping us out, they love numbers. They love to sit down and figure out how to save money on taxes or what we should budget for capital expenditure next year. They just love that stuff. I hate it. I don't want to know any of that. I just want to know what the dollar amount I should be able to spend.
I had a super hard lesson in that and exactly what you're talking about. So I went out and bought a brand new service truck, right? 179 the whole thing, $180,000, whatever it was. Man, I was sitting good that year. Didn't pay any taxes. Everything was great. till next year rolled around and I owe a bunch of money in taxes and I can't figure it out because, like what you're saying, the P&L says I made money, the bank account shows I didn't make money. And then I had to learn the lesson the hard way that, well, when you accelerate depreciate something, all those payments actually are on the balance sheet.
Correct.
It's not in your P&L.
Correct.
And so many guys misunderstand that and they don't know how to combine the two. And it's like this aha moment when you explain to them that it's an asset, so it's on the balance sheet. They're like, oh, we didn't know that. And to your point about having it really good, I think so many shop owners get caught with their pants down is probably the best term I can use. Something happens and either an opportunity or maybe they want to go buy the property. The person they're leasing from comes to them and says out of the blue, hey, I want to sell it to you. And they find out their financials are such a wreck that they couldn't get a loan for a used car. I mean, has that helped you with having clean financials? I mean, I'm sure at some point in this expansion, you've had to do some kind of financing or some kind of outside cash influx.
I've got a great relationship with the bank that we use. They actually helped me start my trucking company back in 2003, and buy my first truck. So I had a really good relationship. What I didn't have was solid financials. So what we were doing was doing a lot of guessing and using purely reputation with the bank to say, you know what, we're a good risk, but it really limited us on what we could do. We could never get a line of credit that was large enough to really capitalize on large purchase parts, fast moving parts, so that we could buy them at a discounted rate and make a better margin. We were essentially a cash business, with a little bit of help from the bank. Having solid financials, our virtual CFO emails our financials after we approve them by the 15th of every month for the prior month, emails those off right to the banker. Our file at the bank is constantly up to date. They know exactly where they are, and there's never any question anymore. They see exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that's something too that any business, doesn't matter what it is, that eventually, if you are in growth mode, you are going to run out of money. I don't care how profitable your business is. If you double the size of your business overnight, nobody has the cash. They can't cash flow that, right? Like it's a great problem to have, but realistically speaking, you don't have enough money to go buy all those parts. And so if you have some giant fleet that comes in and gives you this opportunity and the things are solid and they're financially good, a lot of guys just can't take the work. They can't handle it because financially they don't have enough capital to even go after that work. And I think that's where you see a lot of small operators get stuck in this endless loop of I can't grow, I can't expand. It's because their financials are horrible. And I get that they feel like they're just a mechanic, but that goes back to what I say all the time. You've got to change your identity. The minute that you open your shop door, you no longer are a mechanic. You're a business owner. And if you don't act like a business owner and you don't work like a business owner, you're right. All you ever will be is a mechanic.
For very many years, we leveraged our accounts with our vendors. And we're fortunate in our area that we have multiple vendors to choose from, multiple dealerships, and to be able to purchase from them and negotiate terms was super important. When we first started, we were on a cash basis, and then we moved into a 10-day, a net 10 on our invoices. We eventually moved to a net 30, and we actually negotiated last year to net 60 with our vendors. If they want my business, they have to allow me 60-day terms. Being able to leverage that 60 days really keeps cash flow where it should be, which is in our pocket.
Yeah, and that's something too that I think gets missed. If you've got a shop that's buying stuff on credit cards all the time, and even if they think, well, it's easier that way, I don't want charge accounts, I will show you a business that has cash flow problems.
Absolutely.
Because that endless cycle of paying and it just is detrimental. On some of these jobs, especially, this, you take something like an engine overhaul, which, I mean, in that case, I do encourage people to get money up front, but you're still paying for a lot of parts out front. I mean, you go buy a crate motor from Cummins, you're probably out $30,000 cash up front because most of those vendors, especially if you're a smaller guy, they're not going to extend that much credit to you. And so it makes it really hard to do these jobs and it slows them down. And that's something that's pretty valuable to learn is that being able to have access to capital really is what helps business grow and keeps it fluid.
And God forbid that customer, even if he does put a down payment down, I've run into it a lot of times, especially with owner operators. They'll come and they'll put, $15,000 or $20,000 down on an overhaul, which we all know today ends up being 35 to sometimes $50,000, depending on what all we're doing. And the job gets done. It's been in the shop for 2 weeks, goes to get break-in dyno, and it's all set, ready to go. And we invoice it out, and the customer says, well, I got to go to the bank for the rest of it. And now that turns into a 3 week process. So we're 5 to 6 weeks into this project. If I was paying for all those parts out of pocket, I'm $25,000, $30,000 deep in parts, plus labor, plus overhead expenses to cover that job, and it's 6 weeks for payment. So by extending the terms with my vendors out to 60 days, really adds a buffer to that. What it also does is allow us to take larger fleets on. As you well know, a lot of larger fleets, they want longer terms. They want 45 days or they want 60 days. They're great work. They pay their bills, but it's long term. So I got to carry all that cost.
And they're slow. And I remember I had an awakening experience with that. United Rentals came knocking on my door and said, "Hey, we need help." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's help these guys." Cause I mean, it's United Rentals, right?
Yep.
Threw us all kinds of work. Everything was fine. Wasn't really an issue. Didn't think about asking about payment terms. And I'm like, "Hey, where's my bill?" Or, where's my money? And they're like, "Oh, we take 90 days to pay."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What? 90 days?" Like, I don't know that I could float that. So I think that's something too that a lot of shops, as they grow, it's really important. You need to be very clear with your customers about terms. And just like you said, that overhaul, I would have very in-depth conversations with my customers and say, this is how this whole process is going to go. We expect you to have us half up front because we're not going to do this and get stuck with the truck. We are going to let you know when the payment is due. We expect you to have that money then. I cannot tell you, I've swung engines and had the guy show up and be like, "Oh, what's my payment plan?" And I'm like, "What do you mean payment plan? There's no payment plan.
Yeah.
Like, you get the truck back. Well, if I don't have a truck, I can't make money." And I'm like, I kind of learned we need to basically don't wait for the customer to bring up the thing. You just need to be upfront with people on the issue. We even started doing that with road calls. Especially if it was a retail customer, we're like, "Okay, just so you know, this is how this is going to go. You're going to be expected to pay, and we're billing you for the text time until you pay us. So it's none of this 3 hours to go find the owner stuff. You got to pay when it's done."
Yep. And we actually started taking our 2 hour minimum on credit card prior to dispatching, especially on overnight calls. It's not typically such a big deal during business hours, but after hours, my guys were getting hung a lot, or sitting on the side of the road for an hour waiting for somebody to finally get a credit card that works to get us paid. So
Yeah, I had an experience like that. I get called out at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the truck stop to work on. And this is one of the biggest oversized carriers in the country, to go fix a strobe light. I get there, I fix the strobe light. I call the office, like, "We don't have a way to pay you till 7 a.m." I said, "This is going to be a really expensive work order then." And the lady chuckled. I said, "No, I'm serious. I'm on the clock until I get paid." She's like, "Well, I don't have a way to pay you." I'm like, "Well, you can pay me to sit here and watch Netflix, but." And I can imagine if that was an employee, they would just be absolutely frustrated. Like, they want to go home. They don't want to sit there and wait for this person to find the manager or the owner and get payment. And that's an example of why it's so important to have those conversations up front.
absolutely. And a lot of the times, the customers are not the kind of customers that you want. They're broke down. They're already in bad shape financially. They don't have a way to pay for that. And one of the ways I found that we limit the amount of poor customers was to raise our service call rates. I raised them to the point where the guys that don't have any money, that aren't going to pay me or are going to be a hassle, won't use us. They'll find a cheaper service in town. So by raising my rates to the point where the customers that I already have accounts with, or somebody that really needs the work done, it makes it worth us going out, and they don't hesitate at the price. We're just $25 more than everybody else, but it's enough to kind of limit some of those poor customers.
Well, and it is. And the other thing is too, is you have to understand that what you're doing at the level you're doing it costs money. I know that when I was doing it, I used to tell people when we show up, we mean business, because I rolled up in a very nice F-550 service truck that had everything in it you could ever imagine. Like, there was honestly not a job that I couldn't do out of my truck that you could do in a shop if I really
Yep.
wanted to. I had that much tool and equipment. But the other thing is you find too that if you have customers that only care about price, then it doesn't matter how good of a job you do, they're not going to be happy with you. And that's actually what I started doing on after hours calls because I started paying my guys $60 an hour. Like I just told them flat out, I don't expect you to work for nothing. If I get you out of bed, it's Sunday morning, we're going to get paid. And I was charging almost $300 an hour for a service call. And I wasn't shy about charging that. Because honestly, I was the only guy in town that had Davy software. I was the only guy in town that could do a force regen on a pack car. And I wasn't ashamed to charge it. And you know what? That's fine. Those people don't want to pay your rates. They're not your customer. And I'm not saying run everybody off, but I'm just saying that if you only have a limited amount of time, and if your parking lot is backed up 2 weeks and you can't see straight and you're the cheapest guy in town, you really need to reevaluate your rates.
Rates across the board we've raised. Our internal labor rate, trailer shop labor rate, we've gone up exponentially in the last 3 years. And I've had zero complaints. Take that back. I've had zero complaints from quality customers. Zero.
And that's something too that you'll learn, that you can raise rates and people won't notice. And I'm not saying that you're taking advantage of people, but let's face it, what's the inflation rate's been the last couple of years since coming out of COVID? I mean, it's 8% ish a year. So, I mean, if you're not raising your rates by 8 to 10% a year, you're going backwards.
Absolutely. We even just started, and I know a lot of guys already do it, but not many people do in this area. We started charging a computer hookup fee, with our new accountants, and we're able to break that out and see those numbers. We're spending roughly just Insight licenses, Davies license, computers, laptops, all the equipment that we need to diagnose these very, very technical trucks. We're spending pretty close to $70,000 a year for this shop. And that's something that we have to do. We have to have. That's what separates us from the other small shops in town. And we started charging a $100 hookup fee. No different than shopping the truck or getting the truck in the shop. I don't have to charge that. If a customer is really complaining, or I need to stick to a budget that we had already predetermined, that's $100 I can pull off that bill that doesn't necessarily hurt me, but the 10 other ones that I get help pay for that new laptop for diagnostics.
Well, and that's something too. I'm going to say that this is a pro tip for every shop listening. If you are not charging a computer diagnostic fee every time you have to use software, you are losing your rear end. And it's so simple to do. And it really doesn't matter which system you have. What I always told people, this is an example of exactly how you do it step by step in Fullbait. You go into your inventory, you call it whatever you want to call it, you make it a non-track part, you put the thing at $100 or $125, and then you sell it as a part. And then what you can do is you can pull a report every quarter and at the end of the year. And what I did was I went to my P&L and I looked at what we spent on diagnostic software, because that was its own category.
Correct.
And then we compared it to the diagnostic fee. And then you could tell it's like kind of the same thing you should be doing with your shop supplies. Like you should be looking at how much you've spent on shop supplies and how much you've collected. And I'm not saying that we're there to make money on it, but you certainly don't want to go backwards on it. And you're absolutely right. I think the license now, if you get Volvo and Mac, you get the pro version where you can program ECUs and different components. It's $4,000.
Correct.
The first time you buy it. Like that's not a little bit of money.
Right. And that's one laptop. God forbid you have to have two. Volvo Mac, I probably wouldn't, but I have 3 computers with Pro Insight. And that's a separate license for each one. Same with Diagnostic Link. We've got 3 computers with Diagnostic Link. It's necessary for these guys to do their job.
Yeah, and I think that's another example of a place where shops can really start whittling away at that bottom line. Like it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but it adds up pretty fast. If you think about how often you're using those computers, and we did the same thing. And really what dawned it on me is the dealerships are charging it. Guys, if you don't understand, MHC Kenworth charges for every 6 inches of emery cloth.
Yes.
And there's a reason why they're a $1 billion company. It's because you can't give stuff away for free. And the way I was training my employees was, did we have to pay for it? Yes, we have to charge for it.
It's a very, very good rule. We even started, there was a lot of, small nuts and bolts, 1/4 inch nuts and bolts and stuff. We started realizing what we were spending in them. And then we looked at how do we inventory them and how do we keep track of them? And, I'm supposed to get a tech to count out every nut and bolt that he grabs out of the bin. Instead, we put a scale in and we weighed them, and It doesn't matter what size the bolt. It could be 1 inch or it could be 5/16. It all gets paid by the pound, and we average the cost across all of them, and we charge by the pound. It has worked out so well, and we watch the balance in our shop supplies account go positive more and more every single day because we're not losing money on nuts and bolts.
I think that's a huge area that a lot of shops have lost in, that they don't understand what they're paying and they think it's just this minimal amount. But it's like if you're doing millions of dollars a year in sales and you can recoup 5% of something that you're not billing for. I mean, I still go into shops, Adam, and they're not charging for brake clean. I'm like, that stuff's not free. Why are we
Right.
not charging for it? And the same thing with bolts. They're like, it's too much work to charge for bolts. And actually, you're weighing it out. It's one of the smartest ideas because that's the way some hardware stores do it. The other way I told them to do is just look at your bolt bin like a grid system. So it starts with 1, 2, 3 down, ABC across. All the technician, they don't have to remember this giant part number for a bolt. All they have to remember is A1. I use 5 of A1.
Sure.
And that's the way you code it in your system.
That's a great idea as well. I like that a lot. Yeah, you absolutely have to charge. The point that you made that if we pay for it, we have to charge for it. I mean, that should be something to live by as far as the shop goes.
Well, and so many people misunderstand, and this is where I think leadership has failed in most shops. They don't explain to the employees what things are. They charge for stuff and then nobody knows what it is. It's this mystical thing. So when the customer starts giving pushback to the employee has no idea. Perfect example of that is shop supplies. I can go to 100 shops in the US and ask the person at the front desk, what do I get when I pay shop supplies? And they'll just look at me with a dumb look. And it's like, no, you guys need to train this because you're going to get questioned on it. What is shop supplies? Shop supplies covers everything that we have to pay for to fix the truck that is not something that is a part. So brake clean is not a shop supply. Zip ties are not a shop supply. Floor dry is a shop supply. The soap you use to clean the floor after the truck is done, that's a shop supply. Rags are a shop supply. And I think that that is an absolute thing that if you guys don't have if every shop watching doesn't have some kind of script for the service advisor about what a shop supply is and why we have to charge for it, you are going to get a lot of pushback from customers.
Yep. And that goes right back to procedure, right? With a solid procedure in place, it's really easy to explain what you're charging. We all know that we're not overcharging. All the shop owners that I know personally, in my area and that I've dealt with, many of the guys that have met at Diesel Connect, the couple times that I've been there, there isn't anybody out there trying to take advantage of anybody. They want to make an honest living for their family and they want to be as fair as possible. Unfortunately, myself included, overly fair to the customer and not fair to the business that we own and not fair to the employees and certainly not fair to ourselves. We end up giving so much away trying to be fair when we should really be doing is being fair to ourselves and being competitive. You used MHC Kenworth as an example. They're not taking shop supplies off and they're charging for every zip tie, every can of brake clean that go through that shop. The people that are going to MHC Kenworth are expecting a certain level of service. So if we can provide that level of service in an independent shop, we can justify charging the same things that those big ones do.
Well, and that's one thing that I would warn people. If you're a shop listening to this and you are one of the probably 40% of shops that I know of that can't afford health insurance, this is why you can't afford health insurance. You're absolutely right, Adam. Everything you said was spot on. You owe it to your employees to make a profit. Because if you're not making a profit, you will not be in business.
Yep.
And part of making a profit is to sell things. And so you cannot give stuff away. And I'm not saying that, hey, a guy has a bad experience. In Fulbay as an example, it's so easy to let him push that button to take shop supplies off. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that generally speaking, you guys have to charge, meaning shops have to charge a valuable rate for what you're taking. An example of this is anytime you think you're taking advantage of a customer, just go call an HVAC guy to come fix your air conditioner in your house.
Yep.
I have a house in Phoenix that I had to have the air conditioner fixed on. 800% markup on Freon.
Yeah.
And that's just the going rate. And I get it. A recovery machine is expensive. Like we're up to like 10 grand for an AC recovery machine. So I can't charge just a little bit for Freon. I've got to charge a lot for Freon because I've got to recoup that cost on that machine that we're all legally obligated to have.
Absolutely. Equipment isn't getting any cheaper. Operating these businesses aren't any cheaper. You look at some other businesses that a tradesman like yourself and myself could have gotten into instead of diesel mechanics? Carpentry, for one. They need minimal overhead, small enclosed trailer, some Milwaukee nailers and a few saws, and they can go to work. We have to have thousands, millions of dollars worth of equipment. I've got a Hunter alignment rack drive over pit that I've got 250, almost $300,000 invested into. I've had to update that machine twice since I put the rack in. It's horribly expensive. To think that we should be still doing alignments for $170 is absurd to me. You can't make any money doing it that way. You have to be able to charge for what you do. The more professional you act, the more professional that you are, the more justifiable it is to charge a reasonable rate.
And a lot of that comes down to policy, procedure, and training. If you have people on the phone who are not confident in what you do and they don't believe that you're worth it, they're not selling that.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the owner. I'm talking about the people on the front line. Like I do this with shops I work with. I literally call in and act like I'm a customer, and I try to see, will they give me their rate? Will they try to play the diagnosis over the phone game? Will they start researching parts and looking stuff up to make me a quote? Like, these are the things that we do to find out whether or not people are trained right.
Yeah.
And it's really surprising how much they're not. And to go to your point about charging for everything, I was talking to a guy, his name is Dick Bascom, and he's been at this for over 50 years. He was at Diesel Connect. The man is so soft-spoken, it reminds me of a grandfather, which he is. But he said something very simple. You owe it to yourself to get a return on your investment. He's like, I've got over $5 million invested in this business. Why don't I deserve a return on it? Like, if you took that $5 million and did anything else with that money, you would expect a return. But so many business owners don't look at their business as an investment and say, I deserve a return on my investment.
I think a lot of reasons for that is we start out as a technician. We open a shop or we buy a service truck and we go into business. Very little overhead. We grow fast because we do good work and we have a good personality, and we treat people right and fair. And our business grows so fast that we just don't really understand how to keep any of the profit, or we don't understand what it takes to move ourselves to that next level. To me, it's super important to be involved, not only in the diesel industry, but in local small business groups, to have other business owners explain that they're in the same boat we are. It doesn't matter whether they're a chiropractor or a contractor or a diesel mechanic. We all face the same struggles with employees, with material costs, with healthcare costs, with you name it. Losing a key employee is super hard, but we all go through that at some point. And it's great to have some resources where there's other people that actually know what you're going through. And even if they're just listening, it helps.
Yeah, and I think that's something guys need to really reach out and spend the time doing is, join the Chamber of Commerce. That's probably the cheapest thing I know to do. If you join the Chamber of Commerce, you're literally in the room with all the business owners, and you can learn a lot from that. I mean, I joined it as a young person when I had my transportation business, and I still use a lot of those connections to this day, like really good business connections, bankers, lawyers, guys who do promotional stuff. I mean, everything is imaginable you can gain from that simple little once a month thing you might go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to surround yourself with the people that you want to be like. If you want to be a successful business owner, the chamber's a great place to be around a bunch of successful business owners.
It is. It's a great tool. Well, Adam, I really appreciate your insight and taking the time out of your busy day to be on with us today. Again, this is Adam with Premier Service Center. Thank you for being on.
Thank you very much, Peter. It was a pleasure to be on the podcast with you today, and I enjoy listening to it. There's always great insight.